I hold him, I go to the bedroom, I put him on the crib, and I just crashed on the floor and I started to cry because I had a discharge of emotions at that moment that I couldn't, that I noticed that I was not being able to process them properly.
Hello and welcome to the Dad Dialogue podcast. Thank you for joining us today. You can go over to daddialogue.co.uk, click on contact. There is a sign up form there to express your interest to become a future guest. I'd love to hear from you. Of course, you can follow us on Instagram or YouTube. Today's guest is Mário. Mário is the father to a 2.5-month-old boy now, and I was really glad that he reached out, expressed his interest to come onto the show. I think hearing the story of such a new father has, for a start, it's really helped me, just reminded me of the importance of those stages of helping a partner through pregnancy and as well as bringing a newborn home. I think it can really benefit us to hear these stories, to remind us that it's important to look out for the new fathers and the new mothers in the communities that we are a part of. So I really encourage you to listen to Mário's story. Maybe it will help encourage you to reach out to some people in your community that might be needing some help. A little note, he mentioned something called a kraamzorg, which I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. It's a Dutch word for a nurse who would come and visit you, or like a health visitor that would come and visit you once you bring your baby home to help out. He uses the term a few times. We don't actually go over what the term means, so I just want to clear that up before you listen. It does kind of become obvious through context, but that's a sort of health visitor that would come and visit you and help you out, get settled at home once you bring the baby home from the hospital. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the discussion. Let's get into the conversation. Mário, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your family?
I am a Portuguese architect. I came from a small town in the in the south of Portugal. I've been living in the Netherlands for 2.5 years now. No, actually, almost 3 years. In August, it will be 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm married to a Dutch lady called Julia, and we met each other in Barcelona 7 years ago when she went there to study, and I was already there. We met there. Then, professional reasons, she wanted to come back to the Netherlands. I came 1 year later. We got married last year in April, and now in April of this year we became parents of Bruno. So Bruno right now is about 2.5 months old.
Well, congratulations. I'd say you're still pretty much in the newlywed stage, and then obviously such a recent child. That's so amazing. Two things happening quite quickly. How close were so both in April, how close were the dates?
Our anniversary for the wedding is April 25th, and Bruno was born on the 3rd. And my birthday is on the 16th of April.
Oh, wow. So your April is just your big celebration month.
Yeah. Right now we have basically a month. Well, now with Bruno, let's call it 1.5 month of just celebrating things happening, because now it's his birthday. Julia's brother birthday is 3 days before mine, and it's mine. Then it's our wedding anniversary, and then her birthday is also in the beginning of May.
Okay, wow.
So we have like a month that party every other week.
Well, we just hope there's nice weather in April moving forward in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Cool. So, how have you found becoming a father? That's less than 3 months. You're still in the early stages.
It's it's good, but it's also difficult. Especially my situation was, well, so many other people for sure, but my situation, I feel it was a bit mentally. It was on the edge to be a bit difficult, because a couple of months before Bruno was born was actually very difficult at the office.
Right.
I was under a lot of pressure, and it was very intense. At some points, I felt extremely tired, and that was a moment that I was actually afraid if I would be in a mental state to have a kid.
I understand.
To have a newborn. Thankfully, everything went fine. It was very exhausting, the birth, especially for Julia, but also I was very tired the next day. But becoming a parent is great. You have all your difficulties, of course. But I tend to say to Julia, now that I'm back to work, I was 1 month at home on a leave, and now I'm back to work. And even if when I have difficulties at work right now, it always warms me when I get home and out of nowhere Bruno starts to smile at me. Because that was something that took a while, took longer than what we expected, but having that smile, it makes things easier. And becoming a parent, it's a bit of that. Everything is difficult in the beginning. First week, even with the kraamzorg at night when you're alone, it's difficult. The first week after the kraamzorg leaves, it's difficult. But then you have moments that you just enjoy it, and things get a little bit easier.
I'm glad you found those enjoyable moments already. I think some parents maybe, or at least some dads, let's say, maybe mums as well. I'm not sure. Obviously, speak mostly to dads, but I think some dads maybe haven't had those enjoyable moments as early as like 2.5 months. I remember for me, this is one of the biggest things that I tell other people that are expecting is that it sometimes feels like a machine for like 4 or 5 months. That's how I felt, at least. Like I didn't kind of get much enjoyment or connection with my firstborn until kind of 4 or 5 months in. That's just how it went for me. And I look back on that and that was a really tough time. But if I had known that if I just kind of buck up and, do what I need to do, it will happen. And now, like, I'm head over heels for my 2 boys. Like there couldn't be anything but love for them. But those first few months can be really difficult because you're expecting this like immediate connection. I know some people think that like you see the movies where like the baby grabs out and like grabs the finger or whatever, and you expect for this magical moment to happen, and then your heart just feels like different than how it's ever felt. But that doesn't happen for everyone, and it can be very difficult. I'm happy that you've been able to find those moments, like that you look forward to seeing him when you come home from work, because not every dad does feel that when they go back to work.
No, but I totally understand you, because I do remember during that month of my leave, there was a lot of days that I felt that I was going through motion, like I was going through the motions of the day, because I don't know, that month it was extremely busy all the time, because either we had a washing machine that had to be hung, and while that one was still drying, I already had a different one that needed to run, and then everyday dishes, like put the dishwasher to run, the next morning picking it up. Like there were days that I felt like if I take a morning to rest, something it will pile up, and it will disrupt all the sequence of things that need to be happening for the house to run smooth.
Yep.
So I understand. I totally understand that idea that not everyone maybe find that those moments so early, because sometimes it's hard to go through these things, especially if you don't have a lot of people to help you in those first months. We had friends that came to us, and they kind of help us with here or there. Maybe some of them only came to visit, but some of them actually came a bit earlier than what was expected to visit to help with something. My sister also, at the end of April, she came here and she spent like 4 days with us, and she helped us so much. We were going to a stage that we were kind of breaking, because we're getting very tired through all of this. And she was here and she gave us a rest for us to also enjoy a bit of the day with Bruno a bit better. So those things do make a difference.
For sure, yeah. That was going to be my next question, actually, was kind of the support network that we sometimes have, because obviously you're from Portugal, but your wife is from the Netherlands. Is she from around this area? Does she have family in the area?
No, she grew up in Haarlem.
Okay.
She grew up in Haarlem, Homestede, but mostly in Haarlem. Her parents live in Homestede. Yeah, and our network support is not unexisting because we have friends that helped us, but maybe it's not as big as a lot of people have. Also, in the middle of all of this, Yuli's father got a bit sick, like twice. So there were 2 moments they were supposed to visit us, or even her mom was supposed to visit us, and then, okay, let's postpone this because we don't know yet if you're going to be sick or not, and Bruno doesn't have his first vaccination yet. So let's see how this can go. So there's always these small things like that.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's not that it's non-existing. It's just it's small, but we use it when we need.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. That it's good that you have friends that are willing to do that. I think it can be tough to build up those, especially for international people, international couples. finding those friends that are willing to kind of go the extra mile to help out is super important, as well as kind of swallowing the pride as a parent for asking for help. And I think that's also a really important thing. When someone offers, like, oh, do you need help with anything? I was always that person that'd be like, yes, please. And then like tell them what to do. It's like, bring us some food, or like go out and buy us some groceries and we'll pay you back. Like, one offers you help, like say, is there any way I can help? Try and think about how to do it. That's sort of my other piece of advice for the new parents out there.
Mm-hmm.
Take the help where you can get it. You touched on it a little bit earlier. I want to zoom into the kind of first 24 hours or maybe 48 hours, first couple of days from when he was born, because in preparation for this, I was thinking back to my 2 times of bringing home a newborn, and I think it's just something I hadn't really thought about too much, like reflecting on that time. So I'd like you to share with us how that was, like how it felt, what were some of your emotions and your feelings in those kind of first day or two after Bruno came home.
So the coming back home was quite difficult because how the birth was, we ended up having to stay, well, initially 12 hours at the hospital because there was a risk of infection. So by standard, you need to stay 12 hours before they actually check the baby. Because of something, we ended up having to stay 15 hours. So this shortened our flexibility window to come back home and still have a kraamzorg the first night, the first day. Because later we realized, because they explained us, that if you get home at 8 p.m., you don't get a kraamzorg that day. You'll get a call, they will explain you stuff, then the kraamzorg comes the next day. And both of us were counting with the kraamzorg at least for a few hours the first day, because we didn't know anything. And as the time went by, I realized at the hospital, at some point, okay, let me learn how to change a diaper. Let me ask one of these nurses to please teach me, because I have no idea. I'm probably gonna be alone at home with this kid tonight. So yeah, when we left the hospital, we left a bit almost in a rush because we still wanted to have a kraamzorg that day, but it didn't work out. We called the agency and they say like it was 7:45. We can't find anyone else right now. So get home. We're gonna debrief you, and tomorrow morning you'll get someone.
Right.
It was tough. That night was not necessarily the whole night, but the first few hours were tough because we both were exhausted from not sleeping. Even in the hospital, we didn't sleep. I was having a bit of things in my head related with Bruno, but not related with this topic. Things going in my head. And we got home. We got dumped a bunch of information about him, and we had to play with it. So you breastfed him. That was also a challenge because she was having difficulties for that first day, how to do it properly. And then I go to change his diaper, and the process of changing his diaper was. I felt like I was stabbing a knife in my own heart because the moment I started, he started to cry like crazy, and I was trying to maneuver him. I was trying to change his diaper in a way not to hurt him. Flash news for any new dad. Babies, even newborns, are a bit more resistant than what you will think.
It's true.
It took me a while to understand this. I was so careful. Oh God, let me not pull the legs too strong. Let me not pull the arms. No, they resist few things. They won't resist if you drop them on the floor from the ceiling, but they will resist the changing of the diaper.
Yeah.
But he was crying so much. I was getting so stressed out inside, but I was keeping my calm outside. I went through all of that. I changed his diaper. It was my first diaper ever. This memory is engraved in my head. I changed the diaper. I dress him. I hold him. I go to the bedroom. I put him on the crib, and I just crashed on the floor. And I started to cry because I had a discharge of emotions at that moment, and I noticed that I was not being able to process them properly. So I crashed in between exhaustion, sadness, being worried with him, anxiety of not knowing what I was doing. I sat on the floor for 5 minutes, 5 or more minutes. I don't remember exactly, but I know I sat on the floor. I started to cry. I sat next to me. She calmed me down, and then I just kept there for a bit longer. Bruno at that point was already asleep in the crib. Like nothing happened before. I was the one who was going through all of this. And that was my first night. And during that night, I changed diapers, I think, 2 or 3 more times. Still with difficulties because he would start to cry at some point. And the next morning, I realized, because the kraamzorg explained me that, oh, you were not doing anything wrong. He was just cold. The moment you take his socks and his pants, he gets cold immediately. And that's the way he has to communicate. He just cry because it's too cold for him. And I was like, really? I went through hell with this in my own head, thinking that I was gonna
hurt him or something.
That I was gonna get bruises or something.
Oh, right, yeah.
He was just cold, and there was nothing I could do for that. That was the first time that I got this harsh experience of, even when you prepare everything to be perfect, it's not gonna be, and there's a lot of steps that you're gonna have to do them wrong before you learn how to do them right.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that story with us, because I think when our partners are pregnant, some of the preparation a lot of dads do might be from a book, and they kind of follow along the pregnancy and they understand how the baby's growing, and you do all these steps of what your wife might be going through or your partner might be going through during those different stages. And then you kind of think about the month stages once the baby's born, but there's not going to be many books that are going to prepare you for what you went through in that evening when he came home, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people might go through something similar because, as you said, it's such a tipping point of exhaustion, tiredness, emotions, worry, anxiety, and so many things. And I believe that the only way a parent can truly be partly prepared for that sort of experience is hearing other people's stories and connecting with them. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I hope that someone listening to it can kind of take that on board and just understand that we're all in this thing together, and experience that we're never too sure what can really happen, and you need to be prepared for the emotional explosion at times. I think just to highlight as well what you're talking about with the baby in terms of how they're reacting, communicating through crying. I remember seeing, I guess, nurses and things with my kids when they were born, because my second born, he had to go into the infant ICU for a day or so. And we would go in and visit him, and we would see the nurses in there kind of taking care of the other babies. And they were just not literally throwing them around, but metaphorically throwing them around when they're changing their diapers and nappies and feeding them the bottles. They were so physical with them, let's say. But in a completely safe way, because they are the experts that have literally handled thousands of babies and they are doing it. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. They have a bit of resistance built in. They're pretty elastic. So there's, within reason, you don't have to be that concerned.
But that's a funny thing. That's not something that until you become a parent, you won't understand unless someone actually points it out to you.
Yeah.
You will always think that there's this fragile thing, almost like a glass that's the wrong movement and it will crack. You always think that until you have someone telling you, no, you can do this, or you have the experience of, no, this happens. The next thing, this was the first night I was saying, the next thing that happened during that first week or the week after, I was having a lot of anxiety because I was changed at home. I was during those first weeks, I was the one who did most of the changes because Julia wasn't really makes sense. Julia needed to recover. Birth is very difficult for someone who never assisted one, saw one. Birth is very difficult. And she needed to recover. And breastfeeding is also draining. So I didn't even expect her to ask me to do the diaper change. I immediately said, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I was doing most of them in the beginning, I started to be the one dealing with something which was his joints were cracking a lot.
Oh, really?
The joints of the joints of his legs. Every time I I tried to do the diaper change, they were cracking, but like the same way your knuckles sometimes crack when you close your hands or something like that. And there was a moment I started to get very anxious about it. And I had to talk with friends of mine back in Portugal that they were parents, asking, "Look, this is happening. This is normal. Should I go? Should I go to the pediatrician to check for this?" And having multiple conversations helped me to realize, okay, this is normal because their joints are still maturing. So and they are very flexible in the beginning, especially the legs because of the position they also had to have when they were inside the belly. But yeah, I remember that was the next anxiety that I started to have at some point was that what am I doing wrong? He's not crying, at least that, but I'm doing something wrong because I'm hearing so many cracks all the time.
And I think, again, it's just that shared experience and shared stories that can be such a benefit. That forums are another great place, like online. You might not know the other people, but you find people that have a similar situation, and then they kind of post about the resolution. And again, may not be something that you find in a book or a website, but hearing other people and knowing their stories just helps alleviate some of those anxieties sometimes. So I would like to know, how did you prepare for the arrival of Bruno whilst your wife was pregnant?
So I read a book. So let's put it this clear. I even though she says I'm not being fair to myself, I still believe that Julia prepared more for the birthday. She read more, I feel like, and she researched more than what I did. At the same time, we also had a lot of conversations, so that part of that knowledge she had would be shared with me, and I would learn with her. On my own, I read a book that we bought not even a month, like a few weeks after we learned that she was pregnant, because we went to Portugal on vacations a week after we learned that she was pregnant. So when we were there, we actually found a book. We were like, I'm gonna get this book and I'm gonna read it. And it was good. It was interesting. It was an interesting book. Then I did some research here and there on the online, and we would talk a lot. Besides that, we also did a birthing course in Dutch. That was a challenge because I know Dutch. I have the B1 level, but still having a full class in Dutch with a lot of terms that are very specific and you don't know them, at times was a bit challenging. There were days there were moments I was a bit more checked out than others. There were moments that I would have to take notes and check with Julie again. Look, did I understand this at the beginning of this conversation right or not? Because if not, everything else, I'm assuming something wrong.
No. With that, the birthing course and the book, was that preparing for the birth, or was that preparing for becoming a parent, do you think? Because I feel like the two things are different.
The two things are different. The class was preparing for the birth, but the book was preparing for the kid itself to become a parent. And yeah, the other things we looked online and spoke about them was like the curiosities of something that she was reading or something that I looked it up. But most of my knowledge pre-birth become a parent came from that book that I read.
Okay. That's good that it is about parenting, because as I said, I do think they're different, and I do think as someone with a pregnant partner can sometimes get caught up in the lead up and the birth. So what you need to do for a pregnant woman as well as the birth, and then you then start the parenthood, you then start becoming a dad, and that part you have no preparation for. I feel like that was partly me to some extent, but I do think it's an important distinction to make. Towards the end of our conversations, I normally ask people for advice. I feel like we've spoken a little bit about rough advice, but I want you to try and imagine, you can think back to maybe when you were in Portugal soon after you found out your wife was pregnant. I want you to imagine someone who's just found out their wife is pregnant. What advice would you give to that person?
In terms of the birth or in terms of becoming a parent?
Anything. Like, what do you think is most important for that person to learn?
One of the things that I feel like it is going to sound very cliche. I feel like one of the things more important is being present. And when I say being present, is being there for your partner. So during the pregnancy itself, there was a moment that Julia difficulties to even walk for a while. So if your partner goes through something like that, to help when whatever is necessary.
Yeah.
Also be there as a partner, and this works for both ways, like for both things, like after and before the birth. There's going to be moments that being hormonal or not being hormonal just because it's a difficult day, because the weather is not helping, because there's no sun. There's going to be moments that your partner is going to be in a mood, and be there for them to try to lift, or at least just to listen to what they have to say. After the birth, be there in whatever it's needed. I remember the conversation which you had. He mentioned something that we discussed at home. Like, assume that if your partner is breastfeeding, she will be thirsty. So if she doesn't already have a glass of water next to her, bring it.
Yeah.
And be sure to help as much as you can in your physical capabilities. But because this, especially to me, is also helped me to feel like I was present and that I was being useful. And I was being and useful in the terms of useful for her, but also for Bruno. Like, not feeling that she's taking care of him and I'm not creating a relationship with my son. No, I was there. I was changing the diaper. It meant that I was always talking to him.
Yeah.
And communicating with him, saying, look, Dada is changing the diaper. Dada is going to put one sock, and trying to make it funny so he would have a better time out of it.
That's good. That's really cool.
I think, being present is the main thing that I could say to someone like that for this whole process.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it so much. I think talking to you as someone who has a 3-month-old at home, you speak very articulately about it, and it seems like you've already kind of processed quite a lot of the things that we go through as dads. And I think you've arrived at some destinations, let's say, far earlier than at least I have, or I did, let's say, and other dads along the way. So I think what you've shared with us today has been really useful, and really, I hope it's been helpful to someone out there that is maybe in those early stages of parenting as well. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thanks for your kind words also.
And there we have another Dad Dialogue conversation. A big thank you to Mario for coming on the show, opening up with us and sharing his story. I really think it's such an important thing to hear stories like this and be reminded of what it's like to be a new father. It really made me reflect on my time as a new father, and I hope it's helped you as well. And I hope it's also going to encourage some of you out there to look out for the new parents or the expecting parents that might need a little help, support, or advice or guidance. I know I'll be looking out for those people in my communities. As always, daddialogue.co.uk. You can go and sign up to be a future guest. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube, and I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review or a comment on YouTube if that's where you're listening as well. So really do appreciate you listening today, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.